So you're thinking about getting into the remote milling, portable milling business. You got one of these or something similar, and you're thinking about dragging it out into the woods and doing some milling for somebody. Well, I'm going to go through what I bring on every milling job so that you can see what you take besides what you see here. Obviously a nice clean mill, right? It might seem kind of intuitive. You got to bring the mill, you got to bring some bands, can hook, but what else do you bring? So let's go in the shop and let's see everything I bring on every milling job, and hopefully it'll help you out. So I've had the question asked a few times over the years about what I bring on every sawmilling job. And so I thought I would do a quick video, okay, I'll make it quick, about what I bring on the job. So let's take a look. It's a lot of crap. So here you go. I've got a couple bins here, got the umbrella, got a bunch of stuff over here. And I'm gonna walk through what I bring on every job, all right? So first of all, obviously I bring a spare. I've got a extension cord there with the spare, so you're gonna need that if you bring this. So I bring a pancake compressor with a long hose. I think that's a 50-foot hose. I can run that off the generator on my camper, so in remote locations I can use that off the camper, or at a customer location I can possibly get power from the customer and then run that compressor off the customer's power. I use a snap-on high pressure spray gun. This thing is awesome. If you don't have one, you need one. With this sucker set to the highest air pressure that I can get out of it, you know, like 150 pounds or whatever, I can put some serious air pressure with that guy over there. I've got my basket here. That's what I put my fuel cans in. I usually have a minimum of one of these guys sits in that basket. Often I'll have a second one. I also bring water. Usually I have at least one of these 6-gallon water containers. That one's half full. And I also bring a spare water jug. Often that one right there, that's a wood miser jug, actually specifically for the mill. I mean, you can probably get them anywhere, but that one's a wood miser one. You also see a lot of spare gas cans. I've got those up there, diesel for the tractor. Those guys I always bring. I bring a chainsaw. This is my Husky 455 Rancher. It's used and abused. I've had it for about 12 years, and this guy just keeps on going. That's great for trimming branches, bucking small logs, doing a little bit of whittling work on the log. I do have a Husqvarna 576 XPW down there. It was squashed by a tree, so it's not any good. I've got to get it rebuilt. These two bins, I bring those. That's what most of my wet gear goes in, oils and that kind of stuff. I bring earplugs and some wipe all rags. And, you know, having extra earplugs. I wear earplugs whenever I run the mill. Rarely do I not. Sometimes when I'm just doing a quick job or something, I might not, but generally I always do. So I always bring those. I always bring my wood miser manuals. They stay in the truck. You got to have those with you in case you got to do some work. You bring a toolbox with associated tools, hand tools in there. If you don't have one of these magnets, you got to have one of those. They're great. If you're going to take your mill apart, take something apart, you got nuts and bolts and things, you put them on that, you won't lose them. And this is just kind of a cheap toolbox that I got at like Harbor Freight. You know, it gets beat up. It's just got your usual assortment of sockets and wrenches. There are a couple though that I want to point out, and these are thin guys. This is a 3/4 inch. This one is 3/4 and 11/16. You need those two wrenches at the very least for adjusting your drive belt tension. You got to have those narrow wrenches for that. I've got my pins here for the other basket. The basket that's right there against the door. So they go in the toolbox usually. Obviously, I'm going to bring a cant hook. That guy there, I want to say is a 5-footer. I'm going to measure it here. Let's see if I can do this while I hold on the camera. 58, almost 59 inches. That's 58 inches. And that one there is 32. So I bring my cant hooks, 2 cant hooks, 58 inch cant hook, 32 inch. Now what makes a cant hook? Can you answer that question? Most people think these are PVs and they're actually not. They're cant hooks. A cant hook has a hook right there on the bottom versus a PV, which was actually designed for water works when you're working on the water with log booms. It's got a spike on the end to spike the logs. So cant hooks are a little bit different. I bring my 4-foot level. Got to have that if you need to do an alignment. I've got my blade guide alignment tool, so you need to keep one of those with you. You got to bring an 18-inch machinist's ruler. You need that to do the alignment and to align the blade. I always have a couple tape measures. I've broken tape measures on the job, so you've got to have those guys. And I always carry a carpenter square. This guy right here is a band tensioning tool. So I carry my band tensioning tool. You'll notice there's some tape on it there. I always have this ready to go because when you've got to check your drive belt tension, you need this guy. That goes in the toolbox. That guy right there goes in the toolbox. Carry a wire brush. Brushing off the guide wheel. Sometimes they get a lot of sap on them, so you got to brush those off. It's really kind of important to have some of this stuff with you, or you could be in trouble. Okay, what else do we got here? Obviously, the usual. I've actually gone to jobs without bringing a hammer. I don't anymore. Cat's paw. You need some claws for pulling nails out of logs. A pair of vice grips helps with that as well. I've got my felling shims. These guys here, used and abused. If you watched my video doing a black locust stump, well then you saw those. Use those a lot. Okay, what else we got? I've also got a Fowler's tape measure, I guess you can call it. I think this is a 50-foot tape. It's pretty beat up. It's kind of nice because it's got that spike on the end. You spike that into the log. You can measure your logs quickly with that. That's great for scaling logs. I always have some lumber crayons. I need to get some new ones, obviously. Those are pretty abused. I use those lumber crayons both when I'm milling. You'll often see me marking where the stress is in the log or making a mark so I know what I'm doing. A lot of times it's important to mark that log. I don't use the carpenter's pencil for it, but I do have one handy if I need one. But these guys here, a lot of times what I'll do with those is, let's say I go out on a 3-day job. The first day, at the end of the day, after keeping track of what I milled in my logbook, I'll go and mark everything that I've milled up that day. I'll mark it with a red crayon at the end, and on day 2 I'll switch to blue, so that when I go back at the end of the day to double check my figures in my notebook, I can look and count everything that's in blue, and everything that's red was yesterday. And then the next day, day 3, I switch back to red. So what I'll have is on my lumber stacks, I'll have like red marks on top, maybe blue marks in the middle, and red marks below those. So I always have lumber crayons. There's also a Marks-All kind of marker here that I use sometimes. Got to have some chainsaw files. You got to have chainsaw tools. Okay, this little guy here I often use to work sap out of the band wheels. So if you've got sap buildup on the band wheels for milling a lot of pine, every belt change, I clean everything off. I use the air compressor, I clean everything out. And if I've got some band buildup that I can't easily remove in the field, I'll just take that and scrape it off the band wheels as best I can. It works really good for that. Obviously, I've got my fine-tune adjust wrench for the sawmill. Doesn't hurt to bring along a crowbar. I told you I was going to go through this real quick, so I'm trying to make this short for you. There's a lot of stuff to bring. I bring an extra tube of grease and a grease gun with flexible end. You need this flexible end to grease certain parts of the sawmill. It's, you know, you got to grease it every day, so it's important to have that with you. Logging choker chain, I bring one of those. Respirator I don't hardly use, but I bring one. I've got my chaps for falling or bucking up logs, my umbrella. And the umbrella depends on the weather, whether I bring it or not, but I usually do have that. I also like to bring a leaf rake and a shovel. Sometimes you got to shovel out a little bit under the outriggers to get things lined up just right for you. It's kind of a, you know, if you have an outrigger that's sitting on a hump of dirt and it's sitting up too high, it's not below the bunks, I can take the shovel, just shovel some dirt out, drop her right down. And I always carry a box of shims with me, so this is just stuff that's been milled up before that I can stick under the outriggers and shim those guys up. So I carry a box of those. Box of gloves. I prefer these yellow leather gloves. I get them at Costco. They last longer than the others. And I bring a box of them. You just never know when you're going to need some more gloves. For my fluids, I've got some good old palm olive right there. That's a healthy squirt of that in a 5-gallon jug of water with about a 1/4 cup of pine sol. That's what that is. And that's all I use for blade lube. I've got my chainsaw lube back here. I use whatever decent stuff's available. I always carry a quart of motor oil, my transmission fluid with a bucket and a brush for lubing up the rails. I got to bring some fuel for the chainsaw. You gotta love it when these things fall down. I also like to have these hand cleaners. Those are really, you can get them from like Uline. These are the orange wipes. They work really good to clean you up. Sorry folks, but I'm not milling in yoga pants. I don't know how people in yoga pants and tank tops mill without getting dirty. Everything you see here is used and abused and filthy, filthy, dirty. My hands are dirty just from trying to move things around so I can show you what I bring. No yoga pants were harmed in the making of this video. All right, I've got my band box. So generally I carry 15 bands in the box, as well as 2 good band wheel belts. I replace those and I put the new ones on, and the old ones become my spares that go in the box. I also carry my band gauge in the box. I don't need it in the field, but if I did, it's there. I carry it in the box. All right, what am I missing here? I think that's about it. I will tell you, depending on the job, depends on how much fuel I bring, how much water I bring. Even though I like to tell my customers to have water available, I've had to mill on jobs where the best water they had was pond water. Yes, I ended up having to use it. You filter it as best you can so it doesn't clog things up on the mill, and away you go. You gotta have water. I don't use anything else but water, pine sol, and palm olive or whatever kind of dish soap you can get for band lube. And I guess that's about it. Other than I carry a clipboard that stays in the truck. It has my contract in it that I get the customer to sign. I've got my rate card in there, and I keep a copy of the estimate for the customer. I use that copy of the estimate to make the invoice at the end of the job. So I've got that handy. I can write down the specifics about that job. You know, if it's under or over the estimate, doesn't matter as long as I list what it was. And estimate wise, I always tell customers, this is a rough estimate. It's the best I can do with the information you've provided me, what I've seen. Barring unforeseen circumstances, we ought to be around there. And I also have a Write in the Rain notebook that I use to write everything down throughout the day. Of course, I carry extra Write in the Rain pens. And in that notebook, I keep all the information for the day. So I'll put, you know, arrived on site 7 a.m., start milling at 8 a.m., customer cut list, customer wants true 2x6 or dimensional plus 1/8 or whatever. I write all that information down, and then as I start milling, I can start ticking off what I'm making for them on the cut list. Anytime I take a break, I write down, you know, 10 a.m. coffee break, 10:15 start, 12 lunch, 12:30 start. If I'm doing maintenance, I don't charge the customer to do maintenance on the job, then I'll write that down. 1:30, tightening drive belts, you know, 2 p.m. start time again. So I don't charge for maintenance. I do charge for band changes though. There was something else I thought about that I bring along with me. I used to also bring a face shield. Face shields, you know, busted. but I do generally bring a face shield with me. I'll also bring a duster that I have for rain gear, my Tilly hat, as well as this regular Marine Corps covers because I don't wear ball caps. Marine Corps cover if it's not too hot or wet out. If it's miserable out, I'm going to wear my Tilly hat. It keeps the sun off my ears, etc. Although the umbrella does a good job of doing that for me. So I think that's about it. But if you have any questions about anything, or if I've forgotten anything, I'll try to remember to put it in the description below. But if you have any questions, drop them in the comments below. I'd be happy to answer it for you. But that's kind of a real quick rundown of what I bring. This is just the everyday kind of stuff, and I'll make notes about things that maybe I don't bring quite as often. If there's something, you know, like I don't always bring the basket, for example. I don't always bring the compressor. You know, sometimes I don't bring those things. Otherwise, the vast majority of what you see here goes on every single job. I really can't think of something that doesn't go on the job except for like the extension cord and the compressor sometimes, or the baskets on the saw. You know, there's always falling wedges, there's always a hammer, there's always screwdrivers, there's always tools for the chainsaw, there's always a chainsaw, you know, and so on. So all this stuff goes with me on every job. Obviously, I need some more pine saw before I get back to it this year. And I should mention that, you know, a lot of people watch my channel for the sawmill videos, and I apologize if you've been waiting a long time for more sawmill videos. Even though it doesn't look like winter outside here where I'm at, it's still winter. And if the roads are bad, if there's too much snow, I won't risk the mill to drag the mill somewhere to try and do a milling job. It's just not worth it. You know, you might go out for a one-day job or a two-day job, and you're dragging a $30,000+ sawmill and a, you know, $60,000-$70,000 truck hauling it down the road, hoping that things are gonna go good for you, and if something goes wrong, it's just not worth it. So it's better to wait. I usually get back milling again in March or April, and I can mill all the way through to December. I usually don't mill in December except for maybe early December. One other thing that I bring that I haven't mentioned is my camper. I mill primarily remote, and by remote I mean I'm out of town. I'm way out of town, and I'm often 100-150 miles from home. So I used to charge per diem to stay in a hotel nearby or something like that. I actually found I like better to just stay in the camper, camp right on site. Then I've got lots of water. I've got my generator on the camper, so I can run a compressor. I can just kick back and relax in the evening, you know, have a shower, clean up, read a book, have an adult beverage, you know, all that kind of stuff. And it's just really nice to be able to do that when you're out on the job. So the camper's the other big tool that I bring. But again, that's just kind of one of those things that you may see it in some of my videos, or you may not. Depends on where I'm milling at. But anyway, that's about it in a nutshell. I hope this was helpful for some of you. If it was, hey, I'd really love it if you'd hit that like button. It'll share this around a little better. And if you have any questions or comments, put them down in the comment section below. Thanks for watching. The old Jarhead out.